And we're live. Welcome to the Travel News Report Live, where I've got with me Matt Manuel. We're going to be talking in a little bit. First of all, in order to participate in this wonderful conversation, you can use the comments on the YouTube channel, and you can also use Twitter, but you have to use the hashtag TNR Live. You should see it right down here in my lower thirds. And if you use that, then we will be able to see what you're giving us as far as comments goes, and please let us know who you are. It does take a couple minutes for us to respond, because after we talk, it takes about a minute for you to hear it, and then it takes us about a minute for us to see it, and then it takes another minute for us to respond. So don't worry, we will respond to your comments and give you a shout out if that's all you like. Now, if you would like to help support these TNR Lives, we have a Patreon campaign. Patreon, it's www.patreon.com/Let's Go Road Trippin, and you can help support the TNR Live, because this takes a whole lot of effort. And now all of that stuff is done and over with. My name is Brad, and I am a tour operator and a tour manager and a tour guide and a tour just about everything else. And this whole show is about giving you a little bit of news and a whole lot of stuff about the tourism industry. Usually we have a good discussion going on about anything tourism related. I've been doing it for about 4 years now, and I've been doing tours. I just recently started being a tour operator, and my buddy Matt here, he's got a little bit more experience than I do. So Matt, why don't you tell us what you got?
I think you've got broader experience than I've got. You've done so many different tour companies and so forth. But yeah, I've been doing this since the fall of 2007, which I guess makes this fall will be 7 years for me. And I still have not gotten tired of it. I love this work, and I love working with the people. A lot of people think that you get into this work because you love travel. I got it because I enjoy working with the people, and I also tell people that I like being a paid know-it-all. I get to be up there, and somebody pays me to know everything about what we're seeing.
Matt, you know what they say about know-it-alls?
No, what's that?
People who think they know everything annoy those of us who actually do.
Yeah, I understand that. But so it is great that you put this program together, Simon. Simon? Yeah, Brad. I just looked down and I saw Simon at the bottom of the screen, and there we go. But Brad, yeah, I enjoy being a guest host here, or a guest on your program, and thank you very much for inviting me tonight.
Hey, no problem. You're always welcome on my shows, of course. Now, really quick, I was gonna say, so it's been 7 years, so this is your lucky year, right?
It should be my lucky year, and I feel lucky because, as I've told you, some other people may be interested out there. I'm going to be working this year for Rick Steves, who is well known throughout the U.S. for his not Let's Go Europe, but sorry, it's called the Europe Through the Back Door series, and I'll be leading tours for him. They're unique in that their groups never get over 24 to 28 people, which if you've ever been in group travel before, oftentimes you'll be stuck in a group of 40 or 46 people. They're small groups and a lot more personal.
Well, you know, I kind of understand what you mean by big groups. Tomorrow night, I have a group. Well, I go to the hotel. I actually meet them Thursday morning. A group of 89 coming in. 2 buses, all high school students. And it is a gentleman, the director I've had before a couple years ago with another school. But yeah, 90 people is a lot different than 25.
Yes, it is. But also what's really nice about that is to have a director come back and request you is a really, really good thing. That's congratulations. That's the kind of following you want to have.
Oh yeah, and I have a couple of those, which is I feel very fortunate. Anyway, enough about us. Let's talk about the news. And this came across the news desk today, because you know I have this big news desk, right? But came across the news. I saw today that NCL, Norwegian Cruise Lines, is not going to be going to the Roatan, Honduras anymore, because on Sunday one of their crew members actually was killed when he wouldn't give up his cell phone to someone who was robbing him. So the person who was robbing him shot him. So NCL is The person was, by the way, that person was apprehended and he's in custody and he's awaiting sentencing. But in that area, they've had a lot of other crime, and the crime rate is going up and up and up. So Norwegian, wanting to keep everybody safe, did the right thing, and they decided not to stop off at many ports, not just that one, but many in the Honduras area. So I'm kind of glad to hear that they do that, but I'm really sad because that's a port that to give up a port just sucks. There's people that are working in that port in the tourism industry. Those cruise ships bring in thousands of people on a daily. When they come in, 2 or 3 thousand people will come in. That's a huge influx of new customers every day or two. And now that just because of some greedy people, that's now gone for the people who need it, and it's kind of a sad thing.
Yeah, that really is. And I think one of the important things to remember is that if you are traveling and somebody comes up to request your money and so forth under threat, give it to them. Do not fight back, particularly in foreign countries where their laws may not be the same as ours and the protection in the country may not be the same as ours. It is always better to give up your goods because you can always go get those replaced. Maybe it's some effort, but you can't replace your life. And I was sad to hear that story. Apparently, Brad, you were saying it was a Filipino man that was killed.
Yes, it was a Filipino crew member, and as you had stated before, or before we got on live, there's a lot of crew members that are Filipino that are on many cruise ships, and it's really sad. And like you said, under any circumstance, just if it's a cell phone's replaceable.
Very true. Very true.
So anyway, let's get off the sad news.
Yeah, exactly.
Tell us about your news that you've got.
Some good news. There is a rating of U.S. Airlines has come out. Last time you and I talked about the top airports in the world. Let's see, it was Singapore had the best airport in the world by the Skytrax rating. Well, this was a survey of airlines and airline service. And the #1 rated airline in terms of service and on time and amenities and so forth was Virgin American for 2013. And they were followed by JetBlue Airways, Hawaiian, Delta Airlines, and Alaska Airlines. Both JetBlue and Delta Airlines are still in the same positions they were before, second and fourth respectively. They held that from last year. But Alaska and Hawaiian Airlines moved up out of the lower numbers. Some of the other major ones that kind of round out the top there, U.S. Airways was at #7, Southwest Airlines #8. U.S. Airways had improved from 9th to 7th, and American Airlines improved from 10th to 9 this year. And United Continental, who I fly most of the time, and I've always been very happy with, they improved from 14th, but they're still rated down at #12. I guess the biggest change and the one that's most shocking is AirTran, which used to be #3. It dropped to #10. And that may be as a result of some of the unrest and so forth that's going on as it merges with Southwest.
That's what I was going to say. Is it's probably because of the Southwest merger. Now, my biggest surprise on there, and I've never flown this company, is JetBlue even being on the list, because I have heard so many horror stories from people I know who've flown it, and you see it, or they're sitting on the tarmac for a bajillion hours, 6 or 8 hours, not letting them use any of the facilities, food, whatever. And I don't know if that's an isolated incident, but I'm sure it is, but I also don't hear of any other airline having that problem, and I would think that that problem alone should take them way down on the list if they were even on the top 10.
I am very interested in that too, because they're also, as I understand it, now I've not flown JetBlue ever that I know of, but I always assumed that they were a minimum service type airline, sort of in the direction of Southwest and AirTran. but I can't say, and I may have that wrong, so I may have misspoken there. One other interesting thing that came out of the study, though, was that there was an increase in the number of complaints of mishandled baggage by the airlines, which the year before, oh, sorry, actually, sorry, yeah, there was an increase. I had it right. The year before it was 3.07 bags per thousand were mishandled. That increased to 3.21 per thousand. So it's a small increase, but nonetheless seems to be going in the wrong direction.
Yes, it is, and I have personally never had a problem with any of my baggage getting lost or any of that. So that's knock on wood. I'm happy for that.
Yeah.
And speaking of JetBlue, I rank them. You know, Southwest. I used to fly them a lot, and I don't mind them because I like the cheap and I like the no baggage fees. AirTran, never been on them, but I would, like United as up and higher up for me, not the highest, but it's higher up. And then you got Southwest, and then you have JetBlue that's way down here. So again, I'm kind of floored as to why they would be on this list at all.
Yeah, I'm very interested in that as well. But it's a learning experience for me.
Yes, it is. And do you have anything else to say about the airline news? Because I'll go on to our next topic.
No, that's fine. Yeah, that there really wasn't much there, but I did think it was kind of interesting to see where the airline. I think the thing that was most shocking for me is I really thought that United Continental would come out higher.
Yeah, me too. I really did. Now, really quick and we have some people watching. I would like to say hi to everybody. If you'd like to tell us who you are, that'd be fantastic. If you have a question, comment, whatever, you can leave it in the YouTube comments right there. You can see that I've put some comments in there. Also, if you want to put something on Twitter, if you post it to the hashtag TNR Live, you see TNR Live right here. You put that on Twitter, and we will see it, and we will mention you or say hi or whatever you want, or ignore you completely if that's what you want. And on to our next piece of news, which is a little bit more, even happier news. In D.C., we are starting to hit the peak blossom time of the cherry blossoms. And Matt and I both have a lot of friends out there doing student tours and even adult tours that are focusing on the cherry blossoms. I don't know if this is when most of the trips are there, but I know that I am seeing my Facebook feed just blown away with tons of blossom pictures, of cherry blossom pictures. A lot of student tours end up going to DC. Now, I want to know, Matt, have you even had a high school or middle school student group at all going anywhere?
I have. Actually, I worked with what was previously EF Smithsonian and CE tours as well. And I've been in Washington, D.C. In fact, I was very lucky. I got to be at the 2009 inauguration of President Obama. I'm not making a political statement, but the fact is it was a historic event, and I got to stand out there in freezing temperatures for 5+ hours with a group of students, but a really fun group of students from a high school in Bethlehem, Pennsylvania.
Oh, well, very, very cool. Which this brings us into our entire topic of our main meat of this whole live stream. And I'll kind of give a mini backstory. Yesterday morning, Matt and I were talking on Skype, and he had mentioned how he feels that everybody, high school or college or whatever, Matt can kind of go into more details on that, how people should travel overseas from the U.S., travel overseas to get some sort of educational experience. Now, and then my head lit up immediately, and I'm like, okay. And he was continuing talking, and I was listening to him, and I'm like, do you want to talk about this on a live stream tomorrow? And he said, yeah. So, Matt, kind of tell us what your thought was when we were talking yesterday.
I think it's maybe a pipe dream. The money that would be required to finance it, it'd be very interesting to see how you could come by that through a mixture perhaps of public and private funding. But I would like to see students, particularly top students, students who are focused on foreign studies or political science and things of that sort, either at the high school or certainly at the college level, have an opportunity to live for a semester in another country. If not for a semester, at least for multiple weeks at a time, with some sort of an agenda of study and the ability to get out and interact on their own with the people in that society. The reason I say that is when I was in college, the end of my freshman year, I believe it was, I had a chance. Now it was with the men's chorus that I sang with, but I had a chance to travel to Germany. And now, in 2020 hindsight, with a lot of other foreign travel experience under my belt, I realized that Germany was a lot more like our own culture, as opposed to traveling to to an Asian destination or somewhere to the South America. But at the time, it really opened my eyes to many different ways of living and thinking and governing and so forth, and helped me when I came back to the States to look at our systems and our customs and so forth a little bit from the outside, and to understand that they look a little bit different to other cultures. And I thought that was a really good experience. And I just saw that we got a tweet from Steve Smith, and he said that he liked the YouTube's. Oh no, sorry, that was something else that popped up. Ignore me.
Because I'm sitting here watching it, and I'm like, I don't see this.
I thought I was getting to it before you were.
Yeah, and we have another viewer coming on. That's great. For the new viewers, we're talking about traveling for education, as even maybe being required or not required, but definitely highly encouraged, either high school or even college level, and the advantages that can have. If you have any kind of opinion or whatever, leave a comment in the YouTube comments. We can get it there, and we will get back to you. We'll respond to you. And you can also leave something on Twitter. Use the hashtag TNR Live, and we will see it pop up. Even though Matt's a little new to the Twitterverse, it kind of shows now. But talking about how Matt went to Germany when you said you were in high school, correct?
Right.
Okay.
No, sorry. That was my freshman year in college.
Oh, freshman year in college. Okay, so when I was 12, my mom was on a trip with us. She was the interpreter as we went down to Mexico. Now again, I was only 12, and Mexico is more. It's not. Mexico's a good country. There's nothing wrong with it. And back then it was fantastic. And we went down there, and I got a little bit of the culture, but I was 12. I didn't care so much. So that's possibly too young to be taking a trip. And I've been to Canada a few times, and that might as well be it's close enough to the U.S. where the people are just nicer than U.S. citizens. So you can't really say that I have been international in a real fashion, even as going to Germany or even Europe, until last year was the first time I really did anything that could be considered way out there, international, when I went to China. And I was whacked in the head by culture shock. I knew what I read all these articles about the difference in cultures and all this, and but nothing prepared me for what hit me. It wasn't a bad thing, but it was so far out of my comfort zone. It was scary. I mean, I was nervous a couple times. Luckily, I had a personal guide in my wife being there, and but it's still, even her cultures and their cultures in general, it just really was a lot different. The way they cooked food, the way they prepared food, the way they had food in a grocery store. I won't go into details. You can't drink the water there unless you've had all of these shots, and I didn't have any of the shots, so I didn't drink any of the water. You can't do this, you can't do that, and it was unnerving. And the cultural part of the fact that they don't understand what personal space is, and they don't really wait in a line very well, and it's just interesting things like that that I just totally was like, wow. It was like I said, culture shock to me. And I think that had I had an opportunity to travel international when I was in high school or again in college, I probably would have been a little bit more prepared for it because it was definitely it was scary for me at first.
And that is a lot of what I learned too. My second experience going over to Germany was closer to my senior year in college, and we actually was over in Luxembourg at first for about 6 weeks, and that was amazing. Just as you said, many other cultures, for instance, don't have this sense of lining up for something, and they don't have the same relationship to personal space that we have. So getting on and off of a train, having a sweet little old lady virtually bowl me over as we went down the stairs. You know, we kind of think of grandmas as moving a little slower and waiting for somebody to help them down, or you know, standing in the line at the post office. I turned around to look at something, the line moved a little bit up, and suddenly somebody slid right in front of me, and I kind of had to take them firmly by the shoulder and say I was here, and then repeat it in German so they would understand it.
That would, yeah. So I didn't know Germany was like that too. That's we have. I gotta say, we have kind of a quiet crowd today. This is unusual for us. Usually they're talking. Where are our peoples that want to talk to us? We've
Well,
got four.
I probably made the announcement out to my friends and all a little bit late in the process, and also who knows, there may be something good on TV tonight, and just hit the DVR, folks, and come join us.
Yeah, because they can hear us, right? But yeah, just the whole traveling thing. Now, I guess Matt, what my questions are, because I agree with you that it's critical that students travel. Even the middle school kids and the high school kids I just bring to Chicago. There are some of them from small town Kansas, small town Missouri, even a small town Illinois, any small town that they come here and they're like, oh my God, it's culture shock for them. It might as well be going to a different country. So it's always good to see them coming here. I mean, I really enjoy it, and I I enjoy them when I ask them, who's afraid of heights whenever we're going to go into the John Hancock or into the Willis Tower, Sears Tower, and half of them raise their hand or they don't know because they've never been more than 30 feet off the ground, and so I tell them how to go up. I give them instructions on the best way to go up into a high rise or an observation deck like that is, just go up in the elevator, get off the elevator, step one step out, make sure you're out of the way of the people, and walk as comfortable as you want, walk towards the window. And until you can't do it anymore, and once you can't do it, then go back downstairs. And I think I've had one person that's gone back and turned around and went back in the elevator to go down. But at least they went up the elevator. So traveling, I mean, international is a big deal. I really agree with you there. But the smaller towns, going to big cities, New York, D.C., Chicago, L.A., Orlando even. Well, Orlando doesn't really count because it's all Disney World. But going to these bigger cities, it still gives them an experience they wouldn't normally get if they just stayed home.
Very true. I think that is maybe even the first step that we should really encourage schools to make sure their students have a chance to travel to another state or a metropolitan area to get a sense of it, the big city. You're absolutely right. I think that maybe the first priority should be on getting to know our own country, but I think it's also critical as communication and transportation make the world a smaller place, that we allow people to learn other cultures so that we are better able to be good neighbors and, when necessary, good leaders, taking into consideration the cultures that are lining up with us or behind us or however.
And I agree, and I think that we're going to beat this dead horse a little bit longer. No, I don't want to beat the dead horse anymore. But on this same thing, and this was something that, going to our ITMI class, that was one of the first things that we learned going along the same lines, is that, when anybody travels outside their own country, they are essentially an ambassador of their country while they're traveling. And there's a lot of, well, bad connotations of the U.S. American style of traveler, and we get a really bad rap because, well, we have some really obnoxious people traveling as a U.S. citizen. Now, you do a lot of group tours internationally. I don't. What do you do to prepare the people in your group to not give us a bad name? Uh-oh, you're muted. You're muted. Unmute it. Start over.
One of the first things I like to do is to encourage people to learn, and I teach them a few polite phrases to use in that culture, because one of the first ways of bridging the gap between cultures is by using someone else's language, at least to say please, thank you, may I have this, where's the restroom, those kinds of things. If you can manage those in German or Chinese or Spanish, then you've got a first step towards closing that gap. Then, you know, teaching them important things. Like, for instance, I didn't realize that when you are in Thailand, you know, you're going to be wearing sandals oftentimes because it's so incredibly hot there, that if you happen to kick off your sandals, you should not sit there with your feet, the bottoms of your feet, pointed towards someone else sitting across from you. That's considered extremely rude, and I don't know if it's because of the dirtiness of the feet or something of that sort. You saw that during the Gulf War and all, people took their shoes off and beat the statues of Saddam Hussein with their shoes. And again, I think that's a symbol there that in those cultures, feet are considered very, very dirty. Most other cultures, for instance, you enter a house, you take off your shoes. It's not just Japan. I used to think it was only Japan, but virtually every German home I ever walked into, there's a line of shoes right there and a line of slippers right next to it. So they go from their street shoes to their house slippers. Here in America, we typically just walk on into the house and tread everywhere and use the vacuum to clean it up. So yeah, I do try to help them get some simple things to understand how the culture works. The other thing I love to do is to teach people I try to give them a couple of things that they need to go and experience. With students, we all know that young people, the stomach has to be taken care of. They have to have their food. One of the great things of traveling in Europe is the bakeries, particularly in Germany, going to the bakeries, because there's no donuts. They're not going to find the glazed donut like they find back in Dunkin' Donuts or something of that sort. They're going to walk in and find a series of great little pastries with all sorts of nuts and fruits on top of them, and a nice glaze made out of a type of dough that they have never experienced before. And I get these students coming back to me then every other time we stop for a meal somewhere and they have to go out and find their food on their own. They'll say, where's the bakery? And you know, those kinds of things are that transformational things that they'll remember, and they'll tell people about, oh, the food that we had in Germany, particularly the bakeries. That's what I wanted to go back and share.
Well, that's awesome, and you are so right about food helping you learn the culture of that country. And again, I keep talking about myself only because I don't have another reference. When I went to China, first of all, the shoes thing, same thing in China. You take your shoes off when you walk in, and you wear slippers. And my wife, I drove her nuts because I didn't like the slippers that she had were not very, well, they didn't work for me. And then the food, wow, it's a huge difference, and I know you know this because you've been to the Philippines a couple of times, and like when they serve fish, the U.S., this is like disgusting as all ever, but everywhere else in the world it's fine. When they serve a fish, it's pretty much got the head and everything else on it, and you have to eat the bones out. I mean, eat around the bones and all that other stuff. Or when, like, for instance, I won't even tell you what kind of food my wife had for New Year's Eve or New Year's Day, and it was considered a delicacy. No, thank you. And no, it wasn't monkey brains. But the food that they have there is really good. The one thing that I had that I really liked was Chinese barbecue. Now I know you've had the wet sauce barbecue. Everybody's had that in Chinese restaurants. I have not been able to find this kind of barbecue in the U.S. at all, ever. It's not. I looked at the one Barbecue King in Chicago here in Chinatown. It's not the same kind of barbecue. I'm hoping that my wife can bring me this. It's more like a rub, more like it's a really good Cajun flavoring rub, but it's not Cajun. It's a little bit different, and it just tastes so wonderful. And you can put it on everything. You put it on tofu, and it made tofu taste good. You put it on anything. And we sat at her friend's house one night, and we just barbecued everything. it was a wonderful night, and we had some of the Chinese beer, Qingdao beer, which is a really good beer. It's you can get that in the States. I'm sure you've had it. If you've been into a bar that's got all kinds of beers, you can get it there. Yeah, and it's probably one of my favorite beers, but it's a little pricey for me right now. Over there, it's dirt cheap. But yeah, food. Oh, I like the food, but man, I was scared to eat half the food. My friend, just before the night before I flew out, my friend had me so scared to even eat anything when I got there. My wife was going crazy. May was ready to smack me. In fact, about 3 weeks into it, she just said, "Look, you are being way too paranoid. I'm not dead, so you won't die. All right?" And but I said, oh, I didn't loosen up all the way, but I definitely loosened up, and I had some really good food after a while. It just takes a while. Okay, Matt, you wanted to say something.
I was just going to say, that, again, food is another one of those great things. It's an easy cultural experience if you allow yourself not to be turned off. You're exactly right. When you are served a whole fish there with scales and everything on it, and my Filipino friends, they dive right into it. You buy a fish called bangus, which is essentially milk fish, and it's wrapped in a piece of foil. It's tossed on a grill, and you open that up, and they tear right into it, and it's got bones and everything in it, and that's not what I'm used to. When I was in Peru with my friend Lucero, Lucero took me to this great place at the foot of the Andes Mountains near the Sacred Valley, and we ate cuy. And cuy, well, it's the guinea pig, which we have as pets in the U.S. But what a cultural experience to say, here, down there, it's livestock. It's not a pet, it's livestock. And so many people eat it in that Andean area that you'll literally see people walking down the street with these big bunches of greens that they've pulled out of the fields, held over their back. That's all cuy food. They just feed the cuys in their little cage, and eventually they kill the little guy, and they pull his fur off and skin him and stick a stick through him, and that's dinner. And in fact, it is so common that I've seen that there are some international organizations that are now trying to expand the use of cuy to provide protein in people's meals. They're starting to gather funds from private individuals so they can donate cuy to people in other countries so that they can start their own cuy growing, if you will, their own cuy. What do you call for livestock? Cuy farms, I guess. But one thing, I did just get a message through my own private Facebook account here, and my friend Lucero is listening in, and she said, if you cannot travel that much, what would be your suggestion to open your mind to the world as a U.S. person? And that's a good question.
Fantastic. Leave it to her to give us a good question. Go.
Exactly right. And again, Lucero's looking at it from outside the U.S., and she understands that there's a lot of people in the U.S. who will never have the means to really go that far afield. And I think the answer to that is one that people have used through the ages, which is picking up a book and reading a book, particularly a book with a lot of pictures. Nowadays, there's so much video available. There's so much that you can find on Netflix, you can find on YouTube, right here on YouTube, people's travel logs of being in different countries. And I think that's a really good way to go, is just to go out and search for South America, or search for Nicaragua, or search for whatever country that interests you. In fact, I'm getting ready to go to Holland and Belgium in just about a week, and you can bet that one of these evenings I'm going to spend a few hours sitting there watching some other people's travel logs on YouTube to learn about those things. The other part of that, particularly if you live in a metropolitan area, go check out the embassies. Check out the cultural exchange centers. Sometimes, again, I remember Germany, and of course Germany's had a much closer relationship to the U.S. than most other countries. But there's the Goethe Institute, where you can go and you learn much about the German culture. They regularly offer classes in language and grammar. Boy, we need one for Peru, Lucero. We need to start the Peru culture organization here somehow.
Well, and you're talking about the Goethe Institute. I have been to the Goethe Institute here in Chicago, and they do exactly what you just said. They give you cultural lessons, language lessons, and of course, one of the really a decent place to watch videos on YouTube is a little channel that you're on right now. Let's go road tripping. Of course, you're only going to see Asia and the U.S.
That's a good one. And Lucero's still out there listening to us and giving us great stuff. She says, if you're living in a big city, if you're in Chicago and New York and L.A. Or Miami, there are neighborhoods that take on many of those cultural aspects, where you can go down to Little Italy, or you can go to Chinatown, or in some larger countries. I mean, right there in Chicago where you are, there's a whole area where everything is written in Polish, only Polish is spoken. There's a little Russia there, a little Odessa. There are all these different cultural areas, and just going for a walk there, looking in the windows, looking at the foods that are being offered there, watching the people interacting in those places. Get a cup of coffee in the cafe and watch how they talk to each other. Watch how, I know it's cliche, but watch how the Italians talk to you. They got their hands going like this, and they always say you can't, an Italian couldn't communicate if you tied their hands behind their back. But those little things that you can still experience, because those people are fresh from that culture coming here to the U.S.
And you're absolutely right. And there's actually a street, or a section on Clark Street. It's near, I'm going to get this wrong or right, I think it's near Division. It's about 4 blocks long, and you can pretty much eat every nationality that's Chinese, Japanese, German, Swedish, you name it, it's there. And you can just eat it all right there. It's like a string of just multinational restaurants right there. Now, talking about another neighborhood, you can kind of visit Sweden. We have Andersonville, which is kind of like little Sweden. And talking about Chinatown, gosh, well, Chicago's known for Chinatown, and Little Italy, which is not too far from it. Greektown. I live in Old Irving Park, which used to be more Polish. Now it's a really big mix of, there's some Polish, some Russians, some Muslims. They're pretty much everything right here in this one neighborhood. There's a Moroccan restaurant a block away from my apartment, and then the other way I think there's a Muslim or something of that sort restaurant. So yeah, you can get just about anything. Oh, and of course about a mile away from my apartment is the best barbecue you're going to get in this part of the country. I mean, you can go south and get some fantastic barbecue, but Smokes Barbecue has been on a lot of TV shows and has won a lot of awards. And right just down the street from that is a sushi place. So yeah, you can definitely get some culture right here in the U.S., right here in Chicago, and New York has it. New York's got Chinatown. I've had some of the best Chinese food in Chinatown in New York and in Chinatown in Chicago. You got Japantown. I think Japantown's in San Francisco. I know they have Chinatown, but I think Japan's right near it too, which would be really odd considering they don't really like each other. But there's even, if you're in like Vancouver, British Columbia, they've got a huge Chinese community there also. So you can, and San Francisco, I believe, has got a big Filipino community there too. So yeah, Lucero, you're absolutely right. Big cities, you got all kinds of places you can go and all kinds of cultures you can be in. So, I guess we're lucky. I'm lucky to live in a city that has all of these cultures. These neighborhoods are known. They were formed because back in the 1800s when immigrants were first coming in, they would all congregate in the same area, which is how Little Italy and Greektown came about. And now, Greektown isn't. There's like nobody from Greece living there anymore. It's all great, fantastic Greek restaurants. And Little Italy is now mostly a college, but you still have the roots of that, and you still have some of that cultural there, and you can still find it. It's becoming a little bit more diverse throughout the neighborhoods, but places like Andersonville is still very much Swedish, and you can have some really good Swedish food. So yes, I'm lucky to be in the city and have that and have access to all of that kind of fantastic culture. And you can go to this place called the Cultural Center, and they have different things all the time.
Yeah, I agree with you. I think that in many cases, some of the traditional cultures that we've always expected that they would have their small enclaves have become a little more diluted because there are not the high volume of fresh immigrants coming from those countries. But if you look, there's different countries that are filling in on that. And traditionally, we have always, as Americans, and being a bit xenophobic as a culture, been a little down on those freshest people coming in. It was the case with the Irish when they once came here, when the Chinese and other Asians came here, when many of the different cultures entered our society. They were seen as economic leeches coming here. But in reality, if we look at it and look closely at it, they're the ones that are taking the jobs that one could argue that many other Americans do not want to take. And they're the ones that are oftentimes taking the industrial jobs that the more educated people don't want to take. And they're bringing their culture with them because they're coming fresh from those countries. That's why as you travel to the southern U.S. and you go to towns like San Antonio and Phoenix and San Diego, you will find a rich Mexican culture there. And Miami, the influx of Cubans to Miami, and there's little Cuba down there, and they brought their music, they brought their food, and that's one of the drawbacks to living in Springfield, Ohio, is that we really don't have any ghettos here where there's a cultural experience to be had. And I think the closest place I might find that would probably be Cleveland.
Oh, you can, yeah, trust me, Cleveland, you can find all kinds of ghetto. I used to live there, I can say that. But I think, Matt, we're going to be winding it down here because we want to keep this under 45 minutes, honestly. Okay. This has been a pretty good conversation. I hope we get a lot more people watching it after the fact. A lot of people didn't show up. It was kind of a last-minute throw-together kind of show. Basically, what we want to, our main that thought behind this whole episode is traveling is a good thing. Travel, whether it's going to a big city, if you're from a small town, even if you're in a big city, going to a small town and I mean a really small town and experiencing what that's like. And best if you can do it, travel outside your country. Even if you live in another country, travel outside your country, even though Americans, U.S. citizens, are most likely to be, like you said, xenophobes and not wanting to get out of their comfort zones. But get out of your comfort zone, go on a trip. Real quick, don't forget to subscribe to my channel. We would really appreciate a couple extra subscribers. And if you'd like to help support the TNR Live, and we can do more of these and do it on a little bit more regular schedule, if you go to patreon.com/letsgoroadtrippin, there's a link in the description below at the YouTube channel. And don't forget, we're going to New York City. Speaking of going on a trip, we're going to go to New York City June 18th to the 22nd. It's a fantastic itinerary. I can't wait for it to get there. Yeah, that's really good English, right? Anyway, on another note, we're also planning a Costa Rica trip for the beginning of November. I'm really looking forward to that. Matt, you going to Costa Rica with us?
I wish I could. Beginning of November, I'll probably be traveling over in Asia, but I got to tell you, Costa Rica is a place that is on my short list. One of the companies I work with, Caravan Tours, has been going there for a long time, and their people come back loving it. So I am sure that with a nice personalized tour like you're going to be able to offer, that it will be a very intense and enjoyable experience.
Yes, I'm really liking the current temporary itinerary that's almost solid. We're getting prices back on it right now. But is there anything that you need to talk about real quick in closing, Matt?
I think just to thank you for letting me be part of this for the third time here, and I enjoy being able to add to the discussion, and I'm sure we'll come up with many other good topics. So thank you very much, Brad.
Hey, no problem. I'm glad to have you. You're an easy person because you know the ropes now. You know everything how to do this. So thanks to Matt, and I would also like to thank the people that came in and out during the show. We had some people come in, but nobody left comments. Oh well, we'll live. I think it was just too short of a notice. Again, thank you everybody, and until next time, safe travels.